Hey everyone, welcome back to the Restaurant Technology Guys podcast. Today's guest is Jay Fiske, the president of Powerhouse Dynamics. We dive into smart energy management and how it's changing restaurant operations. Jay shares some really great insights as how technology is really impacting every area of facilities management, from HVAC to refrigeration to fryers to coffee machines. He shares how IoT and AI are truly helping cut costs, reduce waste, and automate the stuff that used to make operators crazy. If you're tired of chasing maintenance issues and wasting dollars, this episode is a must watch. If you don't know me, my name is Jeremy Julian. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer of CBS North Star. We wrote the North Star point of sale solution for multi-units. Please check us out at cbsnorthstar.com. And now, onto our episode. Welcome back to the Restaurant Technology Guys podcast. I thank everyone out there for joining us. As I like to say each and every time, and my family likes to make fun of me over the dinner table because I can hear the recordings outside of my office. I say this every time, but I know that I don't take for granted that you guys hang out with us each week. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you for the feedback that you guys give me on social and when I see you in person. Today is a cool episode because I'm going to let Jay talk a little bit about his background, but Jay and his organization have been doing some really unique things that I think are super bleeding edge as it relates to tech, and I think there's a lot of opportunities for restaurants and really all food service operators to be better. But Jay, before we jump into kind of what you get a chance to do, tell me a little bit about your background. Who is Jay? Where did you come from? What's your role? Where you're at now?
Sure. Yeah. I'm Jay Fiske. I'm the president of Powerhouse Dynamics. We are the makers of the Open Kitchen Internet of Things platform for multi-site food service operators. My background, I grew up in upstate New York on the shores of Lake Ontario, and pretty much stayed in the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast for my whole life, but I've always been fascinated with technology. I've always despised waste and loved efficiency. These are concepts I've worked on for pretty much the entirety of my career. And so most of my career has also been focused around the development and introduction of new technology-enabled products and services. And it's been various startups. I spent a brief stint as a partner in a very boutique venture capital firm making early-stage investments in renewable energy technologies. But hard to believe, 14 years ago, I joined a very young, very small, was the fourth employee. So I technically I wasn't a founder, but it still feels like my baby, Powerhouse Dynamics. And I joined this fledgling startup, leading business development. And it's been a really amazing journey building the company from essentially the very beginning to getting acquired in 2019 and continuing and having the really great fortune of having a chance to lead the company for the past 3.5 years as we were part of our parent company, Middleby. But we started out, I don't know if the history of the company is interesting, that we started out making energy sensors for homeowners so they could see where the electricity was flowing inside their house and make improvements. The software would look at this and say, you don't need to run your pool pump for 24 hours a day. You can run it for 12 hours and still have a very healthy environment. Or you could yell at your kids for leaving their bedroom lights on when they went to school, all kinds of things like that. And it was interesting and cool, but not a lot of energy nerds out there like me to make for a terribly interesting market. But we saw an opportunity to pivot the business when I joined into an area that feels the pain of energy cost much more acutely. Mm-hmm. And that's food service, because we just started looking at who really feels the pain around energy acutely and in smaller facilities, because we had originally started out for buildings the size of homes, like maybe you and I have. And if you look at the math, it's restaurants, right? Compared to a house, it's probably 20 times more energy intense in terms of kilowatt hours per square foot. If you look at other commercial facilities, it's 3 to 5 times. So we said, that's really interesting, and we don't see any technology in this space helping these organizations manage their equipment, manage one of their bigger spends on utilities, and deliver that sort of bottom line savings. So we really pivoted the company into that space and continued to evolve and develop the platform to what it is today, which is, broadly speaking, helping multi-site food service operators manage their critical infrastructure, whether it's HVAC, automation and diagnostics, automating lighting and signage, to tapping into the controls and extracting data from a commercial fryer and managing your oil and your fryer operations better, pushing recipe updates to rapid cook ovens, getting visibility into customer-facing super automatic bean-to-cup coffee machines. And so there's just, back to the theme of who I am and what I do and what motivates me. My why is I despise waste. I love efficiency. And there's just, when we took the company and focused on this very resource-intensive industry called food service and applying some clever software in the cloud and getting data, impactful data to that software. The results are pretty compelling, and it's pretty exciting to be part of this. And this is still a relatively new thing for the food service industry, so I like that. I like going where no one has gone before and building new things and also evangelizing and saying, whether it's my platform or somebody else's, there's just people, please take a look at this. There's just so much value out there waiting to be captured. Let us help you.
Yeah, no, and I think, it's interesting when you guys had approached the show because, again, selfishly, I get a chance to sit on this side of the mic and learn. And I love to learn new things. And maybe there's a small piece of your brain that needs to be evaluated by science. Restaurants and new tech, all in the same world. There's a very small percentage of people that can figure this out because it's a crazy world out there, innovating and creating a space. You shared, Jake, this Internet of Things in general, and I guess I'd love to kind of start with let's start with refrigeration, because refrigeration is a big piece. I think HVAC, refrigeration are the two biggest areas where there's opportunities, but let's start with kind of freezers and refrigerators. What is traditional prior to Powerhouse Dynamics? What is the ways that they manage these devices? Is it just they do temp checks and they figure it out? Walk us through, give us a day in the life of those restaurant owners, those restaurant managers that are out there today prior to implementing your solution, and what changes after we implement this new tech that you're talking about?
Yeah, great question. And I know your audience is fairly tech savvy, but if I can start, just explain. So sometimes these frothy terms, right, get people a little bit. Internet of Things is a very simple concept. It's literally a device that has data that is directly connected to the cloud and sending that data to the cloud, right? So it's giving, and that opens up all kinds of possibilities about what you can do to drive efficiency. So if you think about things like HVAC and refrigeration, in a typical restaurant today, you might have a programmable thermostat to control the rooftop unit that's conditioning the space. In the summertime, it's providing air conditioning. In the winter, it's providing heating. And same thing for your walk-ins or reach-ins. There's essentially another little thermostat in there that's saying this reach-in needs to be at 40 degrees Fahrenheit, or the walk-in freezer needs to be at -10. And these devices are measuring the temperature locally and saying, oh, it's a little bit too warm. I'm going to fire up the compressor. I'm going to make cold air again, whether you're providing air-conditioned air for keeping your customers and your staff happy, or providing a nice cold environment to keep the bugs and all the bad stuff out of your food. And the way that staff historically has managed those devices is on the refrigeration side, a couple times a day, you walk around, you're supposed to.
Yeah, whether they do or not is a different conversation.
Supposed to, with a piece of paper and a pen, and you write down the temperature and the time and who you are, and you sign, yes, this is true. But we all know food service operations, it is a really tough industry, really tough job. There's a billion other higher priority things that people have to worry. My chef just quit, or customers complain the food's not good, or
the last 27 times the refrigerator was the same exact temperature. Why do I need to go check it at 28?
I forgot this morning, but you know what? It's probably fine. I'm just going to write down 40 degrees and get on with my day. That's called pencil whipping, right? Happens all the time, and people know that, right? So historically, it's labor intensive, it's manual, it's error prone, whatever. You lose the paper, you can't read your handwriting, you forget to do it, you make up the numbers. All of this stuff, we're dealing with people, right? And just people, it's just sometimes.
Yep, people are people. And they're typically the least trained and the youngest in our industry, right?
And it's a similar story around HVAC, that if I'm comfortable, I don't think about it, right? Because I have a billion other things that are more important. And so what happens is a brand new restaurant, I'm going to put that thermostat in. Okay, I'm going to program it during occupied hours. I'm at 72. And in the off hours when I'm closed, I'll let that drift back to 78, maybe 80. And in the winter, I'm going to set it to 68 and maybe let it drift back to 55 in the off hours. So it's great. What happens? Super hot day. Someone says, I'm working hard. I'm washing dishes, running around, serving meals, busting tables. I'm going to put it to 70. I'm going to press hold. That's much more comfortable. I'm going to get on with my life. Guess what? 9 months later, it's still at 70, hold, right? And so every single evening, it's blasting the air conditioning at 2 a.m., whether or not there's someone in the location. That's very common, right? Because again, it's one of these things, like, it's all that, we're talking about all that stuff that just is supposed to work well to allow you to focus on the other things in having a successful food service operation. And if you're comfortable, you're not going to even think about managing that HVAC unit, but you're literally just lighting stacks of cash on fire by not letting that system operate effectively. So condition the space when people are there, let it coast when they're not, right? And that's historically, have the thermostat. If you've got it programmed, wonderful, you're ahead of 90% of the rest of the industry. Mostly, even if they're programmable, they're not programmed. But you're just not going to think about it. You're not going to worry about it. You're just like, oh, energy is always going to be 3 to 5% of my P&L. I can't really do anything about it. I'm going to move on and worry about getting more folks in the front door.
Where does life go as they engage with you guys, just specifically on these two areas, HVAC and kind of refrigeration? How do you guys help put these IoT devices in to really change not just the behavior, but the reporting and all of those kind of things? Because I'm excited because there's so few people that are, you talk about the percentage of people that even have a programmable thermostat, then that the program is right, and then where things go and how big of a change it can make. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's really fun. And you mentioned the word behavior, and that's a really important word because we've learned, sometimes the hard way, changing behavior is really hard. And I know that's obvious, right? When you have
going back to people.
We're going back to people. And so a big sort of epiphany many years ago is changing behavior is hard. We've got to automate, right? If we really want to have a compelling solution, we have to automate so you don't have to worry about the fridge. You don't have to worry about programming your HVAC. You're going to be comfortable. The food's going to be safe. When there's a problem, it'll let you know. But you're also not wastefully blasting air conditioning in the middle of the night. You're optimizing the use of that equipment, and you're optimizing the use of the fridge. And by the way, I just saved you, maybe between all the refrigeration units in your facility, maybe I saved you and your staff an hour of non-value added administrative work every day, because now someone doesn't have to go around, or they're supposed to go around with that piece of paper and writing things down and initialing it and then filing it away just to prove when the health services inspector shows up, hey, someone complained that they got deli belly last Tuesday, show me your logs. And that task is now off of the shoulders. It's all automated and online, and you can focus on things that humans are good at, right? Being hospitable. Let the machines just record the data, because like you said, most of the time it's going to be the same. It's a very boring job, right?
Yep.
So let people do the more interesting things.
So in that case, once you guys are in there, is it constantly sending data to the cloud? Is it once an hour? Help me understand. And then really, what's the flip side of that? And I'll even just share a personal experience. We had a refrigerator problem in my home just this week. And we lost some food because the refrigerator got too warm. It wasn't so warm but it was, I don't know, probably 45 degrees, and it should have been 33 or 38 or whatever the temperature was supposed to be. We got a couple of dings. We unplugged it, plugged it back in. We thought it was fine. Ultimately, it got fixed yesterday. But with that, it would have been fantastic. And again, not a commercial refrigerator, not tens of thousands of dollars worth of food. But in my circumstance, I had to throw away probably $50 worth of food because it spoiled because it got too hot. I'd love to understand what happens and what are the things that this IoT device can do to help drive some of the behavioral changes that might need to be changed.
Yeah. And I should say, as an aside, as a family man myself, it's not just necessarily about the $50. If my nose is not terribly well calibrated, so you didn't feed your family bad food.
Yep, absolutely.
Right? So there's different platforms out there that behave in different ways. Our platform pushes data to the cloud once a minute, so it's essentially real time.
It's real time.
And that's for a couple reasons, because when you have that level of granularity, patterns begin. You can see some patterns that could be important leading indicators as opposed to lagging indicators. So for example, if we're looking at both the power consumption of the compressor that's controlling a walk-in freezer and the temperature of the box, right? The temperature of the box, that's a lagging indicator to a problem. Something has failed, and now that freezer's at 45 degrees, right? Bad, thousands of dollars. You probably have to throw it away, file an insurance claim, all that headache. If you had seen the power consumption in real time, maybe you would see it was short cycling, it was running continuously, or it failed, right? And what fails, there's a lot of thermal mass inside that box, so it's going to take a little time for the temperature to drift to the point where it's dangerous.
Problematic.
Right? There's the ability to get out ahead of problems, go buy a bunch of bags of ice, call your buddy next door, can I borrow some space? All the things. Restaurant operators are pretty scrappy people.
They're pretty resilient.
Very resilient, right? Very resourceful. If you can get notified of the problem before it really turns into a multi-$1,000 headache, then they're going to act on that. So that's really the key thing, is providing information as soon as it's clear that there's a problem with the system, and not after the fact and you got to throw things away.
Yeah, so I'll throw another personal anecdote. When I was working restaurants, one of our side work pieces was always to make sure that the walk-in was closed at the end of our shift. Do you see some of these same kind of things where The door might not be closed on the walk-in. The door might not be Are those circumstances that you guys can help alert on as well? Because again, back to non-value added, non-human, people would have to walk. Hey, is everything closed up? Is everything locked? And it just turns into this thing where you can automate it, and it, again, you've got humans and they're in the loop, and it's going to be a challenge.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it is very common to say, there's an alert, your walk-in cooler has been at 55 degrees for 30 minutes. Oh, the door's also been open for 30 minutes. Oh, someone didn't want to keep opening and closing because they're doing inventory, right? They're restocking the shelves. Hey, you can call, say, please just close the door. You're causing an unsafe environment, et cetera, et cetera. But you've also just avoided a truck roll, right? Yep. You didn't have to pay $500 for a technician to go out and close the door. It's someone just not wanting to deal with opening and closing doors constantly while they move inventory back and forth from their truck. So there's things like that where, again, just a little bit of data. If you have the state of the door, the temperature of the box, and the power consumption profile, that just those 3 data points with a little bit of clever software can give you a lot of insights about what's going on. Or if there was some issue, maybe the door was propped open, but the software can see the temperature is recovering at a decent rate. Again, call off the alarms. You don't need to roll a truck. So it's
but alert somebody so that training gets better for next week when they're doing inventory or whatnot.
Yeah, exactly. And then the same goes on the air conditioning side. There have been cases, we've had some pretty hot weeks here this summer. Someone will say, it's really hot in here, I think I need to roll a truck, and you can log in and say, well, actually, your system is running full blast. It's providing as cold air as it possibly can provide. I'm really sorry, it's undersized, it's unusually hot, and you've avoided it. I can't make you have more cold air until you buy a bigger, larger capacity unit and put it on your roof, but at least I've saved you a couple $100 in rolling a truck for something that's not broken.
Yeah, no, so Jay, for those listeners out here that are like, oh, I need something like this, does it require a complete rip and replace of their walk-in? Does it require, it sounds like you guys are able to put this stuff in line into existing equipment. Is that true? And if so, what does the remediation look like to get some of this kind of stuff in?
But I'd say, look, anyone who's looking at IoT in the food service space, it typically helps, and commonly will start focused on one specific area. And refrigeration temperature tracking is a perfect example, right? And in 99% of the time, we're retrofitting existing locations. And my company and others, there's various and sundry other bits of hardware out there, whether they're hardwired or they're powered but wireless, or they're battery powered and wireless, depending on the state of the facility, drop ceilings, hard ceilings, all these kind of things you learn about. There's different tools and different sort of types of hardware available to make the retrofit fairly simple. So no, it does not require a new walk-in or reach-in. It's literally, it can be as simple as like popping in a sensor with 2 AA batteries and getting it on the cloud. And then you're off to the races, and the batteries go for a couple of years, and you swap out the batteries and keep going.
I love it. So flipping around, you during kind of your explanation of what you guys do, you talked about some of the cooking equipment. I'd love for you to dig in a little bit to what are some of the things that you can figure out on the cooking side. You talk about frying. We've had different frying oil companies on the show talking about the quality of the oil and how the quality of the oil and the temperature of the oil can change the profile of the food. I'd love for you to talk through both power consumption and kind of just in general how all of that works and what you guys are doing in that area.
Yeah, no, it's, again, you mentioned frying. It really is fascinating. Like it's an expensive asset to purchase. It's an expensive asset to operate. You think about that natural resource of cooking oil. It's thousands of dollars per month commonly spent on cooking oil. And if you look at cooking oil as just another resource that you want to manage in your restaurant, you want to hit that right balance, because we've seen cases where someone's hanging on to their oil too long. And the modern fryer will have a TPM, total polar materials sensors, or oil quality sensors baked into it. If you have, and so getting that data does require a new fryer with these kinds of capabilities in it that can connect to the cloud, et cetera, et cetera. But when you have that data, that really does allow you to strike the right balance of, hey, you really need to dispose of the oil because it will adversely affect your customer experience and the quality of the product. It's right. But on the other side, we've also seen operators who are using twice the volume of oil that they should be, because Bob shows up, and every Tuesday morning when Bob shows up, he dumps the oil and gets fried. You don't need to do that. The TPM is still totally fine. You can't necessarily go just by the color of the oil. Let's let data guide you and do things like reinforce filtering the oil, right? So a modern full-featured fryer will have auto filtration capabilities. And oftentimes the operators just press skip. What's going to happen? And they're maybe doing it for good, maybe they're super busy or what have you, but you can't skip it too much because that's going to degrade the life of the oil, and you can see that in the data. The oil quality goes down, you'll dispose more often, your costs go up. It's a very expensive resource. And yeah, it's been fascinating to me. I've never been I'm not a fryer guy, right? I'm a tech guy, but we learn a lot through osmosis and working with our partner fryer manufacturers and working with the operators who have frying as core to their operations and understanding what's important to them. And there's some operators out there that are getting pretty darn sophisticated about looking at the metrics and really understanding benchmarking. How many cook cycles are we getting per filtration? How many cook cycles are we getting per disposal? Where are my outliers for operators that are skipping filtration cycles too much? There's a training issue, right? Because Internet of Things is not just about making sure the equipment is performing well. Is it being used properly? And we know, again, it's one of the challenges in food service. 200% employee turnover. It's hard to make sure you've got folks there that always have the latest, greatest standard operating procedures and know what to do. A little bit of data will help to reinforce best practices and, again, ensure you've got a high quality product coming out of your kitchen and not overspending on your costs to get that.
And so your guys' devices or other people that you guys compete with in the space are able to monitor all of this data within the environment and kind of set thresholds and set alerts and have people go solve that? That's amazing.
Yeah, it does require a later generation fryer that has a digital controller on it. And that digital controller, of course, it's like a little computer that sits in there. They've already got the data, but historically it's been stranded to that asset, right? So what we're doing is we're getting that raw data from the controller, oil temperature over time, filtration cycles run, oil quality data, all that information that's relevant to operating this critical asset, getting it to the cloud, and then turning that into useful, actionable information. Again, seeing where your best practices are, which organizations need more training, benchmarking on oil consumption, all that kind of stuff. So that data is available. So the key for us and other cloud software providers is like getting it to the cloud and then turning that into useful, actionable, and it has to be succinct. It's got to be actionable because, as we said, we're dealing with people, they're super busy, they need very clear and concise direction on using these assets.
I love it. Jay, another line of questioning is really around plumbing and water usage. Are you guys monitoring water? Again, my parents had a leak problem in their home. At one point, they put one of those alarms, and so every once in a while when a toilet would be continuously running or whatever else. But it is, again, it's something that is a non-renewable resource that we're using too much of from time to time. Are you guys at that place as well? Nothing in our notes, but I'd love to know if it's not, where is it at and is it coming for those people to think about?
I'll give you some perspective and then I'll put my plea out to the industry and to your listeners.
Okay.
So we have, in the past, installed water meters tied to the cloud with some analytics and saying, hey, we can see that the water consumption at 3M is way higher than it should be. There's a leak somewhere, right? A toilet leaking, a sink is dripping, whatever it is, right? So those technologies are out there and they exist. The challenge we found is we can get one of our trained technicians, a licensed electrician, to go into your electrical distribution panel, pop a bunch of sensors in there really quickly and get this beautiful granular disaggregated view of energy consumption, and typically a large piece of equipment will have a dedicated circuit. So it's very easy for me to get granular data down to the equipment level on energy, and for the software to therefore look at the patterns, draw some conclusions, make recommendations, etc. Water's tough, right? I can get the data from the water main, but to disaggregate that, so here's my plea to your listeners. Some clever engineer out there, I've seen people try, but if there's a way to put a sensor on a water line and then disaggregate that to say, oh, that signal is your kitchen sink running. That signal is your dish machine. This is the unique signal from your bathroom sink. That would be really powerful and to help because, again, we've done a limited amount of water monitoring, primarily because the cost to deploy the meter to enable access to that data and versus the value that you can deliver when you're looking at water consumption in aggregate.
The math doesn't math quite yet.
Correct. The math is not pencil out quite as well as if I'm putting in, essentially we have is like Nest on steroids for multi-site operators and fully automated, the energy savings just happen. That's easy, right? That payback is really simple.
So I'd love to dig a little bit more into that. That's where my next line of questioning. What is the impact, Jay? You talked about yourself being an energy nerd earlier on, and I'm super fascinated about the different things because selfishly, I love to, my house is all completely automated. I walk in, the lights turn on. I go to bed, the lights turn off. And my wife's, every time I'm out of town and it doesn't work, she's like, why is this stuff not working? I'm like, it always happens. But I'd love for you to talk. What is the impact? What is the financial impact? What is the operational impact?
Yeah.
What is the business impact? And really, let's get a little bit, I don't know, tree hugger. What is the environmental impact if you can do it properly across the board? Because they are such large consumers of energy in the world.
Sure, yeah, and it's pretty straightforward. When we go in, if someone is approaching our Internet of Things with a focus on energy management, we'll typically go in and deploy HVAC automation and diagnostics. It is the simplest, easiest way to automate and deliver savings to the bottom line without customers really having to lift a finger. And so typically, and it's a very good strategy for the multi-site operators, and we've got others who've been more public about their strategy here, is to say, I'm going to start my IoT journey focused on energy management because it's essentially just math. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to deploy this asset, and I'm going to measure the before energy consumption. I'm going to measure the energy consumption after, and the difference is the savings. You can do the payback, or in some cases we can just do a pure subscription, and the savings are greater than the subscription cost. You're cash flow positive on day one. So that's, again, typical is 10 to 20% reduction in energy consumption on average across an enterprise. And so that's just, again, the elimination of wasteful consumption of energy through automation, straight drop through to the bottom line. It makes a meaningful impact on profitability.
And when you look at those operators are like, don't tell me how to run my store. I know how to do it better. I'd love the scientific answer to that says consistency, all of that.
Yeah.
Again, I realize what our stance is, your stance and my stance. But I'm sure you guys run into that where operators are like, no, you don't know. My store, I need it this way.
I would say actually we say, you're right, you know how to run your stores best. We just help you enforce that. I can guarantee you don't have a procedure that says blast the air conditioning at 3 a.m.
Yep.
I can almost guarantee that's not in your SOP, it's not in your employee manual, right? So let's use software and connectivity, Internet of Things, to help you enforce the way you know how to run your operations best. That's really it, right? And so there's a very simple economic value case to that. It's helping to reinforce, because every operator behaves a little bit differently. They have different rules, and so you want software to be able to accommodate that. And some folks, here's a small example. Some organizations will say, you know what, if it's uncomfortable, I want my store manager to have to call someone at a central office to make a change. That's pretty uncommon, right? More often than that, it's like, I want to give my store staff agency to someone says, it's cold in here, to go over to the thermostat and make a tweak, address the comfort complaint, and then get on with their day. But not change it by 10 degrees.
Yep, and leave it there and on hold for the next 9 months.
Because there's this sort of belief that the more I change the temperature, the harder that system's going to work. And this time I really mean it, so it darn well better get more comfortable now. It doesn't work that way. Once it's on full blast, it's on full blast, and it's just going to... So there's ways to use the software to enforce the ways the operators know to best operate their business. And that's really all that we're doing. And that's very simple to measure, simple to see benefit of utility bill before, utility bill after, direct bottom line savings, payback, etc. And then there's the stuff about for your facilities team, and oftentimes our main users are on the facilities, right? And it is a really hard job. Commonly, it's one facilities manager for 150 locations. They're literally spending all day, every day fighting fires. We can use data to help direct them to say, here's your prioritized list of rooftop units that need some TLC today.
Yeah, I was gonna go down that PM side to extend the life of that HVAC unit, to extend the life of that refrigeration unit, right? Because proper cleaning, proper maintenance ends up keeping it that much longer. And you guys can tell from the data.
Absolutely, you can tell from the data that. And by the way, how about we fix something before you have to pay time and a half to a technician because they have to show up at 9 p.m. on a Friday when you're super busy, right? So there's the savings that can we reduce the amount you're spending on reactive maintenance and get stuff more into the planned preventative maintenance, get out ahead of these expensive reactive calls. It's the easiest thing to measure is the impact on utility bills, but once the facilities folks start seeing what they can accomplish and the visibility that this remote access gets them, they want it, right? We're trying to take a little bit of pain off of their shoulders and make their lives a little bit easier with a little bit more visibility, a little bit more predictability, and frankly, more data to make smart decisions and not just reacting to the store manager who's yelling the loudest at you. Right?
Yep. And I love that. And again, I think that everything is going to be connected at some point. And I think even 10 years ago, I was like, people are like, these things are going to, why would I need these things connected to the internet that are my refrigeration? And the refrigerators work forever. And it's like that all of these use cases that you've talked about truly change the game. And I'm excited to see where that goes. Jay, you had asked me before we hit record, just this plea that says, if they're not going to use Powerhouse like Dynamics, like there are a lot of other people out there, or is there just a couple of people? Like, it sounds like this is something that is here today. It's not this futuristic thing. At a minimum, HVAC and refrigeration, are we at a place where 100% of restaurants by the year 2026 should have something helping? Help me paint a picture, because I'm just not in this.
Yeah.
I'm certain there's going to be 20, 30, 40%, maybe more of our listeners are going to be like, dude, you're right, I need to make that phone call. But I'd love for you to share a little state of the industry, and then where would you like to see it go?
Yeah, you use the word should. Of course they should.
But it makes financial sense. It makes environmental sense. It makes operational sense. There's almost no reason why you shouldn't, other than you've got 27 other things to do,
right?
And you think it's going to be too hard to manage.
Yeah. So for us, when we think about when we're engaged with an enterprise, more often than not, it's just we're competing for capital. And where does the enterprise prioritize? This is, I hate to be so fatalistic about it, but it's inevitable, right? This is because the longer we do this, the simpler it becomes for the operators, the more efficient everything becomes. It's just easy. So it's already happening. I think it's no longer a small number of early adopters, right? This is becoming standard practice. It is the larger multi-site enterprises that are driving connectivity and Internet of Things, whether it's on the energy side, whether it's on fryers, refrigeration, coffee machines. That's where it is being driven today. We're in several thousand plus location deployments now for various chains. And again, those are the ones who, because of the size and magnitude, all these critical assets distributed all over the country, they want that visibility. But there's a long tail of the mid-size, and then mom and pops will eventually have a lot of this capability. It's happening now. It certainly won't be industry-wide by the end of 2026. That would be pretty exciting. But yeah, in 10 years, I think so. I mean, we're not the only ones out there making an energy management solution. There's certainly other players out there. We've decided, however, to do a pretty deep focus on the food service space. And so it's not just about the thermostats and lighting automation, it's also about the refrigeration and the fryers and the coffee machines and the shake machines and hot holy cabinet, rapid cook ovens, all that stuff. So we've taken a slightly different angle than some other folks in the space have taken. There's other Wi-Fi thermostats out there, right? Excuse me, but that's a bit, we are, as I mentioned earlier, math led us to food service pretty early on in our journey, and we've learned a lot about the industry, what the operators value, their pain points, and so I think we've got a bit more of a tuned solution for this particular space. I'm quite excited about that.
I love that. I'm going to ask one last quick question, just because this is something anecdotal, but I'd love your opinion on it. I had heard when you walk into certain convenience stores or certain restaurants, they've got an open cooler versus a closed cooler versus having just the plexi plastic across. I'd love your opinion. There's an aesthetic aspect of it, and then there's a true energy management aspect of it. But I'd heard somewhere that those things consume 2 or 3x more than what a standard refrigerator might with a door on it. And I'd love, I guess, just help educate our listeners, because you might aesthetically like that, but it might be costing you an extra $20 a month to run this open refrigeration unit to be able to allow them to get, again, I walk into my local bagel place and they used to have it open and now they've got it behind a closed door.
Right.
Clearly they changed for some reason to do that. I don't know if the old one broke or what happened there, but I'd love just kind of your opinion on some of these things, because I think sometimes they design these in without this in impact in mind. And I don't know. I guess educate our listeners if you wouldn't mind.
Look, it's a great point. As an energy nerd, I see the open cases. I'm like, oh gosh.
Yeah.
But look, let's give credit where credit is due. These operators are not dumb. They're very smart, very savvy people. And I am sure multiple people have probably done the studies between how much friction there is in opening the door to get your selection versus just reaching it. So probably I would imagine someone has done that trade-off. I don't know the difference between how much revenue you can drive from an open display case versus one behind doors versus the extra cost on energy you spend to keep it open. So perhaps that calculus is changing. Perhaps many years ago when these became popular, energy wasn't as expensive as it is today. I know that's the case, right? It's certainly much more expensive today than it was 20, 30 years ago, and that's continuing to go up and up. So at some point that math may change where it makes more sense to put the door there and reduce energy consumption because you're now got that enclosed space. I want to work with the challenges as they are in front of me and just deal with reality and try and put sensible solutions in. I want to meet my customers where they are.
Yeah. Sorry for the curveball. It was just
Yeah, no, it's all good.
I was like, maybe he's got an opinion on it.
Yeah, and there's clever things like there's air curtains, and I was a mechanical engineer by training, so there's things you can do to minimize the impact so it's not just freely blowing out into the environment, but yeah, of course, it's not a physically constrained space, and so your energy consumption to keep that product cool is going to be a little higher.
I love it. Jay, what did we miss, if anything, on today's show, other than how do people get in touch with you and your team to learn more?
Yeah, I would just say when operators are considering, hey, I've heard a lot about Internet of Things, I think that there's a lot of opportunity there to, whether it's reducing cost, protecting food, reducing administrative labor in my facilities, it may feel a little overwhelming. And I would say, reach out. We're happy to do a discovery call. Most of our customers start pretty laser focused on one area, right? And say, let's just tackle energy first, or let's in HVAC, or let's just tackle refrigeration, or let's just tackle your rapid cook ovens and get them rid of thumb drives. We can do menu updates over the air because you do them many times a year. It costs you money. Let's start laser focused and then solve that problem. But we like to work collaboratively to say there's a roadmap to digitizing your operations to drive more efficiency and eliminate more waste and have ultimately a more successful business. But start focused, right? You don't have to boil the ocean all at once.
Yep.
We can solve some very simple, very specific problems and then go from there.
Awesome. And again, I think for those multi-site operators, especially facilities teams that are just constantly going to be playing whack-a-mole, trying to figure this stuff out after it's broken, not preventatively. And so how do people get in touch? How do people learn more? How do people stay on that train to be able to learn how can they solve these energy management challenges?
Sure. You can website openkitchen.com, or you can email me directly, jay@powerhousedynamics.com. Happy to chat with anyone who's curious to learn more.
Awesome. Jay, thank you for educating me, quite frankly, and our listeners. While I'm not an energy nerd, as you self-proclaim, but I'm like super excited about this stuff because I really think technology, and I say this often on the show, technology for technology's sake is worthless, but technology that truly solves business challenges and makes our lives better is a huge piece of where things are going. I did forget, and we got through 39 minutes without talking about AI. Where is AI coming into this?
Yeah, not coming in. It's here, right?
It's here. I'd love for you to share a little bit about where that future of AI is already here and how it's truly automating some of the things that you guys are doing.
Yeah, so one example is we've layered on some AI technology on the energy side. So if you think about a facility that, say, like a quick serve restaurant may have 3 rooftop units conditioning the space. Normally, they just operate independently. Whenever this one sees that it's hot, it's going to turn on. It may turn on simultaneously with the one right next to it. What that does is it drives what's called the peak demand, right? The peak power consumption at the restaurant.
Yep.
It drives it way higher. And so the utilities actually charge you both for your total energy consumption, but they also charge restaurants for peak power consumption.
Yeah,
so we
surge
can apply
pricing like Uber when you're going to a concert, right?
Great analogy. So Metallica's in town and you're going to spend a lot for your Uber ride. So yeah, when all 3 rooftop units are running simultaneously, right? So we have applied AI to that to coordinate, say, this one runs, okay, now this one runs now. So to try and prevent them from running simultaneously to reduce that demand charge. And so there's one just very specific example of AI. We've got some other AI coming that will enhance some of the diagnostics. Believe it or not, most multi-site operators actually don't have a comprehensive and up-to-date list of make, model, and specs for things like HVAC equipment. So we don't always know how they're supposed to behave because we don't have the specs. But we're applying AI to say, oh, here's how it behaves here. We can deduce using AI what this system is supposed to be doing and then get a little bit more precise about when it's experiencing trouble. So yeah, we're just scratching the surface. But yeah, AI is already here in our platform and we're adding more and more every day.
I love it. Jay, thank you for educating me. Thank you for educating our listeners. As I said on the onset, guys, I know that you guys got lots of shows, so thanks for hanging out. If you haven't already subscribed, please do so on your favorite player. Check out Jay's organization, Powerhouse Dynamics Open Kitchen, and give them a call. Honestly, it doesn't cost you anything other than maybe an hour of your time to kind of share what your problems are and let them see if they can solve your problem. To our listeners, make it a great day.
Thank you so much, Jeremy.